Hi everyone, I'm Mr. C from the Raspberry Pi Foundation, and we are so pleased that you could all join us today to celebrate your team's fantastic achievement. Every team here today has been invited because you are either a winner or you are a highly commended team in this year's Mission Space Lab Challenge. Well done to everyone. All of you really are elite space scientists. So I'd just like to take a couple of seconds to introduce you to my European Space Agency colleagues who are on the call with me today. Joining me, we have Elsa, Alana, and Dave, who coordinate the Astro Pi program for the European Space Agency. Hey, everybody.
Okay, and we have a very special guest for you here today. I'd like to introduce to you ESA astronaut Matthias Maurer. Matthias is originally from Saarland in Germany, and his specialist subject is materials science and technology, in which he holds an engineering degree and a PhD. Interestingly, he also has a master's degree in economics. And Matthias was actually part of the final 10 in the 2009 ESA astronaut selection. And even though he wasn't part of the original member of that class, he did join ESA in 2010 as a crew support engineer and as a Eurocom for the Columbus flight control team. And after participating in a number of ESA analog missions, such as CAVES and NEMO, joined the ESA Astronaut Corps in 2015 and passed basic astronaut training in 2018. An interesting fact about Matthias is that he can speak Chinese, and he's even been on training in China, along with Samantha, who's on the space station now, with Chinese taikonauts. And he was assigned to his first ISS mission named Cosmic Kiss in 2020 and flew to space on SpaceX Crew 3 in November last year, and actually only got back from the ISS in April. So he's pretty much fresh from space for you all today. And also one last thing, Matthias also decommissioned the old Mark I Astro Pi and then deployed the new Mark II version for the very first time back in January this year. And that was the hardware that was used to run all of your experiments in April and May. So Matthias, thank you so much for joining us today. Are you there?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, well, like working with the Astro Pi was one of the highlights of my Cosmic Kiss mission up there. Yes, you already told it. I had the pleasure of decommissioning the older ones and getting the new ones ready. Also install them in front of the window for some of the Earth observation activities, and just was good fun working with Astro Pi. And now I'm curious to see what the team thinks of all the outcome.
Okay, so I think we're going to go into the questions.
Yeah.
How did you and your crewmates ensure that you got on well together?
I missed the last bit. How did we and my crewmate?
How did you and your crewmates ensure that you got on well together?
Okay. So being like when we get selected as astronauts, we need to make sure that we choose the right people that can also live in an enclosed environment for an extended period of time. And so already selecting the right people is part of like the selection criteria. But then later on, we also get training. And we have, for example, human behavior and performance training. We go down into caves where we are put into an extreme environment and also are stressed all the time in this environment. And then there's some psychologists and look how we interact as a team. And then we get feedback. And so based on this feedback, we can improve how we work together. And also in space, we had very often, well, not very often, but we had occasionally discussions saying like, okay, today, let's talk about us as a team. I'm sure there is stuff that I could do better, and please tell me what I can do better. And so we talked about this for every single one as a group, but also one-on-one conversations. And that was very, very helpful because nobody's perfect and everyone detected or discovered some points where you could do better and where we then also improved as a person.
Hello, Matthias. What were you feeling when going to your extravehicular activity?
Yes, so the extravehicular activity was the most intense day of my space flight. It was like I was longing so much for this day. the preparation here on the ground was very intense. We go into the pool, we work into the spacesuit, and it's always a very hard day, the training for it. And so I was looking so much forward to it. And when the big day came, I was a bit nervous and thought like, all right, Matthias, are you well prepared? Are you really well prepared? Do you know everything that you need to know? But as soon as we stepped outside of the station, Raja, my friend, and I, it was almost like being in training. But at the same time, it was a wonderful new environment. I've never been outside, so it was my very first spacewalk. And I felt a little bit like Alice in Wonderland, when Alice falls down the well, and at the bottom of the well, she's suddenly in a completely new world. Everything looks different, and everything is so intense from your emotions. So it was the best day, but also the most intense day of my space flight.
Okay. Should we see now the question from Team Atlantis?
Hello, Matthias. My name is Valeria from the Team Atlantis in Zaragoza, Spain. And my question is, how often do you communicate with your families on Earth? Thank you very much for the opportunity, and hasta luego.
All right. So it seems that my connection here is a little bit sluggish, but I understood that. How often could I communicate with my family on the ground? And so every weekend we had a slot allocated for a video conference so that I could call my family. And so we had a video conference. I saw them, and we could talk about everything. That was a really, really nice slot. But I also have a telephone. And whenever I felt like I want to have some additional time with my family, I could just grab the phone. Well, it's not the phone. It's like I'm calling via the computer, but it ends up on the telephone down here on the ground. And whenever I felt like I want to talk to friends or family, I could just call in the evening after work. And that's what I did also several times per week.
Okay. So let's go through the video from Team Betfrac.
Yeah.
Greetings from Escolas Barlem, Premia de Dalt. Has your degree in material science been crucial to become an astronaut? Do you believe it's an advisable way to get where you are currently? Thank you.
Okay, I need to read the question again. Has your degree in material science become crucial to become an astronaut? No, I think it is very helpful because we do a lot of research on the International Space Station, which is related to materials research. But I have colleagues which are test pilots, or Kayla. Kayla, she is a naval war officer, but interestingly, she also had a background in material science. And then I had Tom, who is a medical doctor, and Mark, who had also a background as an officer in the military forces. So having a scientific background made my research work much, much easier for me. And I enjoyed it because I understood what was part of the experiments, while some of my colleagues executed the experiments but didn't really understand all the details. But it's not crucial. So to become an astronaut, you need to have either a scientific or an engineering degree, or you can be a test pilot. But every one of us gets trained to become a good astronaut. And so with whatever background you have, as long as this is as long as this is acceptable for ESA, you can fly to space and become a good astronaut.
Thank you, Matthias. So, okay, next we are going to go to see Team Centauri. Please play.
Hello, we are Centauri team from Spain. Our question is, will space debris be a problem for future missions?
Yes, so space debris indeed is a big challenge. It's a big topic for us. Those who followed my mission, they know that only after 4 days in space, there was an anti-satellite test performed, and satellite was shot down, and we were flying towards a cloud of debris. And so this is for us was a big problem, because we had to go into shelter. We couldn't work for half a day because we needed to protect the space station and us. But luckily, the teams on the ground managed everything well, and they could tell us when it was again safe to return to work, and when it was safe to continue our standard life on the space station. But overall, we need to take care of space, because space is almost like the oceans. We cannot just like leave our trash and debris up wherever we want. It's a limited resource, a limited space. So in order to have space accessible for future generations, we need to make sure that we clean up space, or even better, that we don't create space debris. So there are several technologies. For example, ESA, whenever we launch a satellite or a mission, we make sure that we don't leave any debris behind. And we also try to avoid collisions between satellites to avoid that new debris is created. And all the old satellites that are not working anymore, now ESA is working on trying to remove the big ones to avoid that they become involved in a collision and become space debris in the future. So it's a big work for us and for future scientists, and maybe also for you, to find solutions how to keep space clean, because space is a limited resource and we need to protect it also for the future generations.
Thank you, Matthias. Okay, so now let's go to the next team. Let's see the question from Lazos22.
Hey, what was the one thing you didn't expect that surprised you the most when you arrived on the ISS?
Yeah, so flying to the ISS, there's a lot of stuff that's going on, and we get a very good training. So usually you should be prepared for almost everything. But what I was not surprised, what I felt I was still surprising and I was not sufficiently prepared for, was the influence of the 3D environment. You know, here on the ground, you can walk, and whenever you work, then you can put something on the table or something on the ground and it stays there. But the first days in space, we all were kind of like a little bit overwhelmed with the floating of everything and the 3D. So you can work on the ceiling, you can work on the walls, you could work on the ground, and it all looks the same to you, because everywhere where your head is up, and where your feet are is down. And so in the beginning, we tend to lose a lot of stuff, because we thought like, okay, I have this item and I put it next to me on the ground, and then I keep floating and I rotate a bit, and a few minutes later, when I look again for this item, I think like, oh, okay, it's there next to me on the ground. And then you look, and you have been rotating quite a bit during your work, and so you need to search again for the item. The first days you kind of misplace a lot of the items, and need to hunt for it afterwards again. So that was more challenging in the first days than we all believed. All as newcomers, the experienced ones, they knew this already, and they made a better job.
Thank you, Matthias. So next question is Team NanoKids.
Hi, Matthias. We're Team NanoKids, and my question is, what are some of the interesting technologies you use on the ISS? Thank you.
All right. So what are some of the interesting technologies that I used on the International Space Station? Well, it's everything is a high technology environment on the International Space Station, and one of the most interesting pieces is obviously using the robotic arm. You know, when we get a supply, new food, new clothes, but new experiments, they come in vehicles, and some of these vehicles can attach automatically to our space station. but some only fly in front of the space station, and then we need to go with the robotic arm and catch them. We call this to grapple them and then attach them to the space station. And so we all had to learn how to fly the robotic arm and how to catch a cargo capsule in space. And that was one of the most exciting moments for us in the mission when we got our supplies, because you don't want to miss it. You don't want to have the fresh food flying away and also the important experiments flying away. But we had a lot of other high technology experiments. And another one was an experiment called Simon. It's a small globe or sphere, big like a football, and it is packed with artificial intelligence, which means there's a smart brain inside this football, and this smart brain then always told me what I had to do. So that was kind of like my trainer or my teacher or my instructor. And when I had to run an experiment, the small sphere called Simon said like, okay, Matthias, now do this, now do that. And so I was impressive to see how good this already works.
Okay, thanks, Matthias. So the next team, let's see the question from Team Pythons.
Hi, we're Team Pythons. I'm Dom.
And I'm Soresh. So we saw you conducted over 35 experiments on the ISS, and we were just wondering, what was your favourite out of all of them?
Thanks very much for your time.
So yeah, you read that I run 35 experiments. These are only the European or the German ones, but in total I was participating in way over 100 experiments on the ISS. Sorry, I got a little bit of cold. So the most interesting experiment that I ran was concrete hardening. So concrete is a material that you wouldn't expect to fly to space. Concrete is all around you. It's for building houses or building other buildings or infrastructure, even sometimes roads. And these materials are used so much worldwide that they contribute quite a bit to the climate change. So there is a worldwide 7.2% of the CO2 emissions come from concrete making. And this has such a huge impact, much more than aviation and aerospace industry on climate change, that we thought like, okay, let's apply space technology and let's look into this classic material concrete, and let's see if we can improve the process to release less CO2, because then we would have achieved a huge benefit against climate change. So the scientists prepared several mixtures of concrete for me, and I had then during several hours I had to mix the concrete in space, over 50 different types of concrete, and we let them sit then on the International Space Station in microgravity to let them harden. This hardening process takes usually several weeks until the material is fully hardened. And now they are back on Earth, and the scientists in the lab analyze them with an electron microscope, but also like they cut pieces out of it and do mechanical testing. And hopefully we will learn quite a bit on how to make the best concrete mixtures. And then we can hopefully transfer this knowledge, this new knowledge that we acquired in space, for people on the ground, and to improve the recipes for making concrete on the ground. And then we delivered a significant contribution against climate change, which is one of the most important topics that we need to tackle as a humanity.
Really interesting answer, Matthias. Thank you. Okay, next question is the question from Red's team.
During your residence on the ISS, did you do an reboost towards another orbit? If yes, what did happen on both, and what do the astronauts feel at this time?
Yes.
Okay, Matthias, you'll repeat the question because it was a bit low, the volume. So the question is, did you understand?
I read the the subtitles. Yeah. So yes, what happened during a reboost, and how did we feel it? It's a very, very nice question, and it's a question that is almost never asked, or actually this is the first time actually somebody asked me this one. So compliments to the red team. We had initially a huge problem with a satellite that was breaking apart, and that happened after 4 days being in space. And so we had to conduct several reboost maneuvers. And we actually had once even to do a deboost, so a slow down of the International Space Station to avoid space debris. That was the very first time in International Space Station history that we had to actually do a deboost to like slow down the speed of the ISS to avoid collision with debris. So what happened? When there is this moment, it is in our computers indicated, and even the ground called and said like, okay, in 1 minute we have a reboost, just to warn you. It's a sensation that is very, very weak for us. If nobody tells us, you don't realize it. But okay, since they called us that like this is a very long reboost, this lasts 3 minutes, we all went to the very front part of the space station in O2, and we piled up there like one next to the other one, and then we were floating. And usually when you float, nothing happens. But in the moment when the reboost took place, it was a reboost of roughly 1 meter per second acceleration. So very, very little compared to the 28,000 kilometers per hour that we fly. And so while we were floating, we could see that the ISS was getting faster, and we were drifting backwards inside the stack. So that was really interesting. And so all 7 of us piled up as a like a chain of pearls, and we could see that the ISS was getting faster, and we were drifting back towards node 1. But if nobody tells you there's a reboost, it is so faint and so subtle that you wouldn't realize it.
Well, that's really interesting. Thank you, Matthias. Okay, so now the next question is from Team Rocker 21.
Hello. Astronauts are exposed to radiation. My question is, how does this affect them? And is there limits they can receive in a lifetime? Thank you very much.
Yes, radiation is a serious problem that we have up in space, and it actually is limiting how long I can work as an astronaut. So it's the same criteria applies for European astronauts as well as for NASA astronauts, or I believe also for Canadians and Japanese. It's when our risk to get cancer is increased by 3%. Then we have reached the limit, and we are no longer eligible to fly further to space. So now 3% increased cancer risk. That sounds like a very complicated thing. It is indeed not so easy to measure. We have dosimeters during our space flight, and the radiation is not the same every day. So the sun has a cycle of 11 years. And that means like during the 11 years, the sun emits sometimes strong radiation, sometimes weak radiation. And this goes up and down during 11 years. And we were up in space during a low phase, middle to low phase of sun radiation activity. So that is good for us. In a few years, the activity will be stronger again. And when an astronaut flies then to space for half a year, he will get probably, or she will get more radiation than I got it. On the other hand, there's also, it's not the same to see the impact of the radiation on 2 or 3 different persons. So let's say with me, I had a girl, Kayla Barron. She's a really, really good astronaut. She's a girl, and I'm a guy. And Kayla is younger than me, and I'm older. And now space radiation, unfortunately, has a stronger effect on women and on younger person. So, which means that even if Kayla and I were at the same time in space, she unfortunately will have gotten more radiation damage to her body than me, just because it's well, the age and the gender plays a role in that one. Yeah. What can we do against radiation in space? We can try to shield ourselves, and we actually had a very nice experiment. Kayla had to wear a massive, big vest that protected her body. It's not very comfortable, but it gives a strong protection against space radiation. Space radiation is also something that you cannot feel, but in space you can actually see it. Whenever I went to bed and switched off my light, I could see light flashes in my eyes. It's when space radiation hits my optical nerve, then I can see this as a light flash. And the very first weeks, that was quite surprising and also a little bit scary in the beginning to see all these light flashes, because it made me aware there is space radiation. That's something I've never seen on the ground here before.
Wow, incredible. So, Matthias, we go to the next question, which is from Team Kormat.
Hi, Matthias. I'm Barnaby from the Sint-Jan Bergmans College in Brussels, and I have a question. What if someone gets sick in the ISS or goes dead? That was my question. Thank you for your answer.
Yeah. When somebody gets sick, we need to help him or her. But sick isn't you can be severely sick or you can just have a cold. It's a little bit like here on the ground. So we have medication up there. So in case I cut myself or we have a band-aid, I get disinfected, or if I have dust in my eye, we have something to clean the eyes, eye drops. If I have a headache, we have pills. If I get an infection, we also get pills. And we have doctors on the ground that always can help us and can recommend what we have to do. We also have a lot of equipment that doctors use in their practice. So we have ultrasound, several types of ultrasound. We have stethoscope. We have blood pressure measuring devices. We have devices to look into the ears. We have EKG. So we have a lot of equipment that help the doctors on the ground to monitor us and then to find out if we are severely sick or if we are just a little bit sick. And depending on what is required, they can prescribe us medication. So it's almost like having a small pharmacy up there. Now there are stuff that we can do, and there's stuff that we cannot do. For example, if somebody of us has toothache, then we all learned how to fix a tooth. We can pull a tooth, or we can also replace a filling. We don't have a drill. We cannot drill and fix the tooth. That would be done with medication and try to postpone the decision to fix it until we are landed again. But there's also a point where maybe you have something really serious and it's time critical, and then the doctors on the ground would say okay, guys, you need to fly back home. And then we bring the sick person and the other three, which are not sick, but which fly in the same capsule. All four need to go back to the Dragon capsule, and then we would undock and we would land, and then we bring the sick person in a hospital. That has never happened in space station history, because the doctors already look at us before the flight and they know that we are in a good health status, and they can more or less tell that for the next 6 months there won't be any serious thing that happens to us, unless there's an accident on the space station, which is really, really severe. Has also never happened, and we need to fly the person back.
Okay, thanks, Matthias. Okay, so the next question is from Team Duo.
Hello. how did it feel when you spent 16 days underwater in 2016 in the Nemo 21 analog mission?
Team Duo. So, yes, in 2016, I lived for 16 days on the bottom of the sea. And above me were 20 meters of water. So you could think like 20 meters of water is nothing, because every one of you who has a dive permit knows that you can dive down 20 meters or 30 meters and come back in one go. And that's probably how you would estimate how you feel. So you're just underwater and that's it. But if you live for 16 days on the bottom of the sea, something happens with the human body, and that means our body gets saturated with nitrogen. So that is, if you stay for longer than, I believe, 1 hour at this depth, there is nitrogen that dissolves in your body. And if I would then decide to come back like a diver, the nitrogen could form again a bubble, and that in the lung, and that could lead to severe damage in my lungs, and even I could die out of that one. So as soon as we dove down and we're down on the bottom of the sea, after 1-2 hours, we knew, okay, there's no escape now, going the 20 meters up. Now we are here for 16 days in our new world. And then we had to discover the bottom of the sea. We did an exploration in the style of Mars. When in the future, people, maybe you, will fly to Mars, Mars is so far away that if we send radio signals from Mars to the Earth for asking a question, for example, when I'm there collecting rocks, and I say like, okay, there are 2 rocks. Shall I take the left one or shall I take the right one? Then this question may last 15 to 20 minutes before it arrives from Mars here on the ground. And then specialists can talk about my question and they can give me an answer. And then again, it lasts 15 to 20 minutes until I receive the answer. So overall, it might be 45 minutes until I get the answer. Okay, take the left rock. It's much more interesting than the right one. But I will only have for 7 or 8 hours oxygen in my suit. So if for every question I need to wait 45 minutes, I will not work very efficiently. So that's the scenario that we tested on the bottom of the sea. We explored Mars, and we found ways to be efficient in exploration, but still to handle this challenge with the time delay, talking to the experts on the ground. Living also on the bottom of the sea, we didn't have only a simple diving suit. We had a special diving suit with a metal sphere over the head. So I really felt like being in a spacesuit and working in a spacesuit and exploring Mars. And that felt I was like in a different world, honestly. Time delay, the light on the bottom of the sea is different, having the fish floating by and looking at our work, analyzing the features on the ground with these different lighting conditions. That made me feel like I'm on a different planet. Very, very exciting.
Incredible, Matthias. So I think we go to the next question, which is from Green Pie.
Good morning. My name is Davide and I'm attending the 5th year of the Scientific High School ES in Reggio Emilia. After taking part in the Astro Pi project, my team and I were faced with a number of questions that we wanted to ask to Matthias. Among them, an important one is, how does the life of astronauts change after being in space for so long? Was it difficult for you to return to Earth after your time with zero gravity? Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question indeed. A lot of changes with the human body. You know, when you fly to space, there's microgravity, so your bones and your muscles kind of disintegrate. Your human body realize I don't need so strong muscles. I don't need to have such strong bones. The immune system gets weaker. Indeed, I felt this when I came back after a few weeks. I got corona because my body wasn't prepared to fight all these different viruses and bacteria. And now I got a cold again because my body is still not 100%, I would say, adapted to the trillions of viruses that we have here on our planet Earth. In space, everything is more or less clean and limited, and so there we never had any issues with being infected or having a cold. That was all wonderful for 6 months. We also in space have a fluid shift, and this fluid shift leads to the effect that we have more fluid in the head than here on the ground. That leads to a pressure on our brain, intracranial pressure that also pushes a little bit on the eyes. And so some of us developed an edema, which is a small, it's a mild disease when you have water in eye tissue. But that also changed when we came back on the ground. And here on the ground, the first days I had to learn how to walk again in a straight line, because in space, our indicator for gravity is not of use. So that is a sensor that we have in our ears. These are called otolites. And it takes 5 days until these otolites work again properly. So the first 5 days, there were people always with me, at least in the first 2 days, and made sure that I don't trip and fall to the ground. Also in space, our spine, which has here on the ground a kind of an S shape, in space it becomes a straight line. So I grow in size. I was like 3-4 centimeters taller than I'm here on the ground. But coming back on the ground, the body needs to learn again that this S shape of the spine is actually much better if you want to go and run for jogging and so on. And the first attempts for running and jogging looked a bit funny, but now, okay, I'm back to standard, and running is no issue anymore.
That's incredible, Matthias. Thank you very much for talking to us today. I'm afraid, everybody out there, that we've come to the end of our winners webinar today. So again, I want to take the opportunity to thank all of you for joining us, and a great thank you to Matthias for joining us today as well. And Dave, a few words from ESA.
Yeah, Matthias, thank you so much for your support today and giving up your incredibly valuable time. I know you've got to run to get the train now, so just on behalf of all the students and from us, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. My apologies again for the small cough. It's like I am now in a marathon where I give presentations, and talking so much gives a little bit of a hoarse voice, and so yeah, it's all part of it, of the presentations and sharing my knowledge and my experience up in space. I really enjoyed my 6 months in space. I think it's a fabulous time, fabulous things that we can do and learn. I very much enjoyed getting all the support from you guys on the ground for sending up nice experiments, looking into your experiments as well. Now after the flight, it really makes me happy to see what you guys achieve. Please keep on doing this. You're a great source of inspiration also for us astronauts in space. And you're the future, and maybe some of you will fly to the moon and even beyond. Cross my fingers for you guys. All right, take care.
Thanks very much. And to all you teams out there, don't forget to spread the word about Astro Pi. We would love to see all of you compete again. So until then, take care, stay safe, and goodbye, everybody. We'll see you later.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.